Yeah. So we have two G5 teams in the playoff. Tulane, Ole Miss, JMU, Oregon. We do regrettably have the point spreads for these games, courtesy of FanDuel Sportsbook. Tulane is a 17.5-point dog against Ole Miss. And you may be thinking to yourself, didn't I already see that game? Yeah, Ole Miss beat them by 35 the first time around. Nextly, JMU at Oregon. Oregon, a casual 21.5-point favorite in a playoff game. So people have some really, really strong thoughts on this. I've had strong thoughts on this for a while. I've told you for a while. It makes no sense that college football is structured the way it is, for many reasons. But it makes no sense that college football pretends like 136 teams are playing the same sport. It's so obvious they're not. And so I've gotten two bits of pushback on that. One bit of criticism is, why do you want to hold down smaller teams? Why do you want to choke off the one chance they have to compete? I don't. I'll get to that in a second. And then the other one is, well, if they don't get that opportunity, then you're financially cutting them off and they die on the vine. I don't want that. You got to get some smart people in the room to understand we can restructure the playoff, or we can rebuild the playoff actually entirely to where you don't have G5 inclusion in the main playoff and still have a very, very nice revenue-producing product that is exclusively G5. You know, a world where JMU could actually win the title or Tulane could actually win the title. Now, everybody logically watching this or listening to this knows Oregon's not playing the same sport as JMU. Everybody knows Ole Miss is not playing the same sport as Tulane. Everybody knows that. But for some reason, we're still forced to pretend they are when it comes playoff time. So you can say what I just said without having disdain or hate in your heart for the G5. I feel the total opposite. I love G5 football. I'd like to build a world. I'd like to build an ecosystem where it thrives, not cutting it out of this system to watch it die. That's not how that has to happen. But the mental gymnastics that proponents of G5 inclusion put themselves through are so mind-numbing that I just remove myself from the conversation, because the way I look at it is, no G5 team's ever going to win this national championship. Certainly they're not. So, it's never like they're going to make a run in the playoff. The worst that happens is it takes away and robs us of what would be far more premier first-round playoff games. And then JMU and Tulane will get disposed of in the first round because they're far inferior teams, and then we'll move on about the playoff. So it's not like I'm going to get burned. There is no Boise, Oklahoma 2007 coming to rescue you on this argument. So the argument you're making is a very bad faith argument if you're making this one. Well, upsets have happened before. That's not even, it's so far away from the point that it doesn't even deserve a reply. But here's the reply. I don't care if JMU goes and beats Oregon. It doesn't disprove my point. My point is they don't deserve inclusion in this format because I could take Auburn and have them play JMU's schedule, and they're probably an 11-1 team or possibly undefeated. Auburn. You look at some of the advanced metrics, they would tell you Auburn's about the 26th to 30th best team in the country right now. They'd probably be favored top to bottom against JMU's schedule. The point there is we're not playing the same sport. We're not looking at the same sport. So the one bad faith argument is someone will cherry pick this one example of an upset happening, and they'll say, see, you can't say that wouldn't happen. My point is not even that it's impossible for them to pull the upset if they get in the playoff. My point is they shouldn't be in the playoff to begin with because the road that they took looks way different than the road these other teams have to take. That's part one. Part two is, with all this money floating around right now, people are insane if they don't think a G5 playoff would sell and sell big. Do you understand how desperate other networks are for quality postseason college football inventory? I used to work at one up until very recently that is void of it entirely. You don't think that if we took a package of G5 playoff games and put them on any network, that it wouldn't sell? Of course it would. There are going to be a lot of proposals coming up about, hey, do me one favor right here. Look down. Are you subscribed to the channel? If you are, thank you. If you're not, please click subscribe. It helps us keep the show free and free of corporate interference. All right, that's it for me. Back to the clip. The entire world of the way that since the SCORE Act died in Congress, the way that we can move forward. And you hear all kinds of pitches about private equity and people just looking to invest in college football. Invest in a G5 playoff. Everybody wins. I'm not trying to box you out, by the way, because I would love a world where promotion and relegation existed. What that looks like is, I don't want to pick any one individual program, but if you're a program that just continues to suck year in and year out, and you keep beating your chest, go, hey man, we're still in the Big Ten or the SEC no matter what, well, maybe you shouldn't automatically be. Maybe if you're that bad for that long, maybe you ought to drop down and Tulane ought to jump up. I wouldn't have a problem with that. A little advancement and escape hatch built on that system, but to sit here and pretend like 136 teams play the same sport is so stupid. So the money's there to figure this out, because really what the argument always boils down to is a fundamental argument. No one really looks at JMU and Tulane in the playoff and thinks to themselves, yep, purely from a competitive standpoint, this makes sense to me. You don't think that. If you're a JMU fan, I got one on our staff. He looks at it and says, I love it because I love JMU. Totally fine. I say the same thing if I were you, Prez. Or if you're a Tulane fan. Or if you're a fan of any team that competes for this thing. You want to make it because you want to make it. I'm talking about removing that lens and looking at it purely from a logic-based competitive standpoint. No one looks at this and thinks it makes sense. So the argument doesn't come to that. The argument comes to, if we're not involved in the college football playoff, we can't make enough money to survive. And what I'm saying is there is plenty enough money floating around the world of college athletics to get it figured out. That's my point on that whole thing. And it should have long ago gotten figured out, but it still hasn't. Our friends at FanDuel hit us up early today. Of course, they gave us all the numbers. Those first-round spreads, very interesting. Very interesting. But I don't want to talk to you about that today. So if you watch the show, you know that we partnered with FanDuel a little over a year and a half ago. One of the main things that I proposed / demanded when I sat at the table with FanDuel is I said, we have got to heavily infuse responsible gaming into the show. So FanDuel always gets a read. They get placement in the show. But one of our non-negotiables was occasionally I got to talk to folks who are at risk of gambling addiction or who are making some very irresponsible decisions when it comes to sports betting. And they said, not only are we okay with it, we'll support it. And they put their money where their mouth is. So you see on this monitor over my shoulder here, if you're listening on podcast, it says Trusted Voices. It is an entire separate vehicle. It's not part of FanDuel. FanDuel has just partnered with it. Conversations about betting, it's a website. And it is totally designed to equip adults, you could be a parent, you could be a coach, with tools and resources to talk to younger people about gambling. Because one of the worst things, it happened to me. One day I was sitting in a guy's house who I used to go watch NFL Sunday with. It was when, online gambling first became a thing. This is offshore. These are the old school days. And I bet 2 4-team NFL parlays. I hit them both, thought I was invincible, and ended up losing a ton of money over the next year or two of my life because I didn't have a clue what I was doing. That's called irresponsible gaming. So this is a program, whether someone advises you on it or whether you yourself take part in it, it's led by FanDuel Responsible Gaming ambassadors. And Randy Livingston is a retired pro basketball player, and his wife is an attorney and a basketball agent. They kind of partnered to build this thing. They're very short, digestible videos. They're like 2 to 5 minutes long. They got downloadable toolkits. It gives you the information you need to know. What to avoid, what to look for. It's not at FanDuel, so it's not on the app. I would advise you, though, if you're interested in this, go to conversationsaboutbetting.com, and it's very well done. That's why we're talking about it on the show. Very well done. So good tool there for parents, good tool for coaches, or just if you're friends with a dude who you know's in trouble right now, just give him the link and then talk some sense into him.